Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our Smart 101 Application Kickoff webinar. So I'm excited that we're joined today by Ms. Charlotte George. Charlotte is our Smart Program Manager, and she is also a former Smart Scholar. We have Ms. Romney Flowers, and Romney is one of our outreach liaisons who works very closely with a lot of universities and sponsoring facilities spreading awareness about the SMART program. And we're also joined today by Eli Leopold, who is a Phase 1 SMART Scholar from our 2025 cohort. And Eli is currently pursuing his bachelor's in electrical engineering at the University of Maryland. And then upon completion of his degree, he will work at the Naval Air Warfare Center in Patuxent River. So we're really excited to hear from Eli, and he'll kind of give us his overview a little bit later in the presentation. But to get us started, I will turn it over to Charlotte.
Hello, everyone. So I am Charlotte George. I am the SMART Program Manager, and I'm responsible for the SMART Scholarship across the Department of War, which we are going to refer to most often as the acronym, the DOW, in our webinar today. And I've worked for the department as a federal civilian employee for nearly 14 years as of last month, but I actually started my own career in defense research because of the SMART Scholarship Program, and I was a SMART Scholar myself. So given my own personal experience with the SMART program, application season is one of my favorite times of the year because I really think that SMART can be a life-changing opportunity, one that provides not just a scholarship, but also a career at the forefront of science and technology. And the SMART program gets to help a new cohort of brilliant students discover their passion for STEM and how they can apply their passion directly to solving some of the nation's most critical challenges every year at this time. So I'd like to share some information with you all today. And starting from the top, if we can go to the next slide, the sponsoring office of the SMART program is DOW STEM. The DOW STEM's mission is to inspire, cultivate, and develop exceptional STEM talent through opportunities that enrich the current and future department workforce who are dedicated to tackling evolving defense technological challenges. So the DOW STEM office primarily leverages scientists and engineers across all of our defense laboratories and our partner organizations to provide this continuum of unique STEM learning experiences. So these opportunities on this slide, as you can see, include educational programs, workshops, different camps for students, and go well into internships, fellowships, scholarships, and career development for students and educators alike. And the largest educational to workforce program offered by the DOW STEM office is actually the SMART program underneath this DOW STEM initiative. And this year, I believe, is the 20th anniversary for the SMART program. And we've had over 6,000 scholarships awarded to date. It's something that we're really proud of here at the SMART program office. And it goes to show that the Department of War has a continued vested interest in workforce development. And they're one of the largest federal employers of STEM professionals. I think what makes the SMART program so unique are part of these benefits here on the screen. In essence, the SMART Scholarship Program provides merit-based scholarship opportunities to students that are pursuing STEM degrees for bachelor's, master's, or doctoral levels. But it is more than just a scholarship. It is a continuum of benefits across all phases of a program or all phases of a scholar in our program. So you're getting these benefits and multiple opportunities for enrichment during degree pursuit, as well as a new civilian employee at a sponsoring facility after you graduate. So these benefits on the slide, as you can see, include full tuition at your university or college, $30,000 to $46,000 annual stipend, and that's $30,000 for a bachelor's degree, $40,000 for a master's degree, and $46,000 annual stipend for a PhD. In addition to that annual stipend and full tuition, you can receive a book and health allowance, which is an annual amount of about $3,500. And beyond your classes, beyond your courses, this is where I think the uniqueness of the SMART program really kicks in. It's that relationship with a defense research facility and conducting your own research as a student through summer internships and through relationships with experienced mentors that you're connected with through your scholarship. I think One of the most obvious benefits is this last one, which is the DOW civilian employment, which is at the end of your academic pursuit, you don't have to worry about applying for jobs and updating resumes and finishing finals and dissertations, because Smart Scholars can focus exclusively on their academics. As part of the Scholarship for Service program, our scholars embark on their careers as a DOW civilian after graduation, allowing them to continue the work they chose for their degree in national defense. And you can go to the next slide. So the general program eligibility and requirements are on this slide. And I think the biggest eligibility up front to discuss is that applicants applying must be a citizen of the United States or Australia, Canada, New Zealand, and the United Kingdom. And they must be 18 years of age or older by January 1st, 2028. And that's to support your ability to obtain and maintain a security clearance, which you'll be using for your internships and for your full-time employment through the Smart Scholarship program. Additionally, all applicants must have a minimum 3.0 GPA, which is at time of application, but also you must maintain a 3.0 GPA during your degree pursuit. And you must be planning to attend fall in 2027, or you're already enrolled in a US accredited college where you are pursuing a degree in STEM. And we'll talk about the STEM disciplines on the next couple of slides in more detail. The scholarship itself is limited to a minimum of 1 year and no more than 5 years of funding. So you have to be able to obtain your degree in that 1 to 5 year window. And you'll be a full-time student. During the summers, you'll have the ability to complete summer internships with your sponsoring facility, as we previously discussed. And when you graduate, that's when you're going to accept your 1-for-1 service commitment as a Department of War civilian employee at your sponsoring facility that's chosen you for this opportunity. And we can go to the next slide. Okay, so this is the eligible STEM disciplines that are forward-facing on our public website if you've already seen them. It's a little over 20 different disciplines, but these are umbrella disciplines. If an applicant's degree is not specifically listed among the list of these STEM disciplines, but falls under one of the broader categories, you are still eligible to apply. And a good example of this is a statistics major would fall under the STEM mathematics discipline. So when we do a couple of examples here, oh, thank you, this is perfect. All of these STEM disciplines can be for either undergraduate and or graduate pursuit, and they're all critical to national security. And again, they're umbrella categories. So this is a breakdown of some majors that are included in these larger umbrella disciplines. To walk through the information sciences as an example, you are eligible to apply for the SMART Scholarship if you are majoring in information technology, informatics, management information systems, or information security underneath this information sciences umbrella. And similarly, computer science and engineering, there are many different majors that fall under that umbrella, like machine learning, artificial intelligence, data administration, computer network architecture, and computational mathematics or engineering. It's good to note, though, that degrees or majors surrounding or focusing on management, medical, or art-related fields do not fall under those STEM disciplines and are not eligible for the SMART Scholarship. So one of the really interesting parts of the SMART Scholarship we talked about, it's more than just a scholarship. There is the degree, but then there's also this relationship that you're building for the jumpstart of your research career at a defense facility. And the sponsoring facilities and their significance is a big part of what makes you a standout applicant, by making sure that you understand where you want to work and including that on your application, because the sponsoring facilities are actually selecting scholars for this opportunity. They are individually reviewing resumes and applications and seeking out folks that have alignment with their core objectives, with their key technology areas, and that will be a good fit for their own facility. And there are over 150 different facilities to choose from, which can be the hardest part of the application itself, is trying to align yourself with one. There is a wealth of information available, so I recommend reviewing it thoroughly. And the best place, if you go to the next slide, is the Smart Scholarship website itself. Our website has a sponsoring facility page for each of our participating facilities that includes information like the programs they support, the critical technology areas they're interested, what type of facilities they have and where. A lot of times, a lab will have several different sites underneath their own organization. And our website will also try to summarize for you the number of scholars at that organization by what type of degree and what type of discipline of smart scholars that they've hired. So you'll be able to sift through all this information and try to find a facility that either you already know about, maybe you've already had an internship with them or done a site visit there for some research-based reason or otherwise, or find new facilities that you've never even heard of before. This website is going to be a wealth of knowledge for you, and I highly recommend you spend some time there before picking your sites for your application, which we'll discuss in more detail. And I think the last bit of knowledge that an applicant needs to know going into this is this life of a scholar. So if you go to the next slide, you're going to see these terms phase 0, phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 a lot when researching the SMART program and trying to understand where you may fit in the SMART ecosystem. And essentially, this goes back to that continuum of opportunities and resources for our scholars during degree pursuit and after. So once you are selected for an award, you're what we call a phase 0 scholar. And before you ever start the scholarship, before you start your fall semester and get funding, our scholars go to an orientation. They make sure that they complete site visits with their sponsoring facility so that they meet their mentors and they meet the folks that they're going to be working with. And they also start their background checks at that point. So again, that security clearance that you need to do your internships and your full-time work. As soon as you start accepting funding through a Smart Scholarship Award, you become a phase 1 scholar. And this is our academic pursuit. As you're a full-time student, you are a phase 1 scholar. We have those opportunities for summer internships so that you can get a head start on understanding your organization, getting your hands on some research, and putting your clearance into action. As soon as a scholar graduates, that's when they go into phase 2. And this is going to be your transition to full-time civilian employment, and your one-for-one service commitment starts. As soon as that service commitment is complete, you are become a phase 3 scholar, and you have your option, of course, to stay with the DOW. For my own personal story, I had a 1-year scholarship. I had a 1-year service commitment, and I have been with the DOW for 14 years. So we have a 91%, I think over 91% success rate. And so we have lots of development opportunities across the DOW with our retained SMART scholars. And I think it would be really interesting when you hear from Eli about their own journey, that even though we all have this singular SMART scholarship, we've all had very different experiences based on our interest, our mentors, and our research. And that's thanks to because of the different facilities and experiences that the SMART Scholarship can provide to us. Again, apologies. Again, this is more than just a scholarship. It's really that continuum of opportunities that work across your mentors, your sponsoring facility, and into your retention. There are many opportunities for what we call innovation awards or international internship opportunities to jumpstart your research at your sponsoring facility once you've started, and really set your career like a foundation in defense research and technology. And so I actually want to pass it over to Eli so they can tell us a little bit about their specific story.
All right. Hi, everybody. I'm Eli Leopold. I've been a SMART Scholar here for just about over a year. I go to the University of Maryland College Park, where I'm an electrical engineering major going into my junior year, and I'm specializing in power systems. So as you can kind of see from the pictures down there, when I'm not in classes, you might find me sailing on our club sailing team or working on our autonomous underwater robot Cubo. So actually, my mentor this year was gracious enough that I worked a few extra weeks and I was able to travel out to Irvine, California to go compete in RoboSub with that robot down there in the bottom right. So speaking more to my internships, over the summer, I've been working at NAS Pax River under the Power and Energy Division, and I've been working at an electrical power systems evaluation facility. So there I do a lot of box level testing of aircraft electrical components. Particularly, we do it to mil standard 704 and 810. So that doesn't really mean anything to most of you guys, but basically that's our standards for aircraft power and environmental standards that all of our components are going to have to be able to survive. And basically, kind of the life cycle is that customers will come into my facility with like a mature product, and they'll want to use it on an aircraft, either for the first time, or they'll want to kind of move it over to a new platform or something like that. And we'll test it to these standards and clear it as functional and safe to fly. And then, so that means I get to see all kinds of different things, like the new sorts of cutting edge designs that are going to be put on the aircraft, and also stuff that has maybe failed a couple times, and we're trying to figure out what's going on with that. So I really get to see all kinds of different things and do all kinds of sorts of different testing. So I actually have a picture down there in the bottom left of our walk-in environmental temperature altitude chamber that I got to work on. It's 8 foot by 8 foot by 12 foot, so we can put pretty much anything that we want to in there, and control the temperature and altitude very precisely to model the aircraft environmental conditions. So with that being said, a lot of the work that I get to do at my sponsoring facility is really hands-on. So I get to spend a lot of time, wiring and instrumenting our test rigs that we set up custom for pretty much every part that we get. Setting up support equipment, everything from oil carts to power supplies and hydraulic systems. And a lot of the times I often get to set up and maintain like repurposed actual aircraft components that we would use to model like mechanical and electrical loads on the aircraft. So a lot of really hands-on work that I get to do. And then even occasionally, sometimes I'll get to go out to the flight line and work on actual aircraft and install instrumentation on that, and then see them, run on the ground, and we'll collect data on the electrical loading. So before I got to do all this cool stuff before SMART, I actually did several other internship programs. So I started out in high school doing the CAP program, which some of you may have heard of. And then in my freshman year of college, I kind of transferred over to SSEP at the same place, and that gave me a lot of work experience that I was able to use in my SMART application. So if anyone here has done any of those programs, that it definitely helps. But most importantly, as Charlotte kind of mentioned earlier, it gave me a connection with the facility and a mentor doing work that I already knew that I really wanted to do and I enjoyed doing. So switching programs over to SMART from SSEP was kind of an easy choice. It gave me far greater benefits, as Charlotte has already kind of talked about. And I didn't really mind being committed to working at my SF because it was just such a great experience with so many different things going on. And then kind of speaking more to my application, I obviously talked a lot about the time I did working at my what is now my sponsoring facility before applying to SMART, and I got my mentor to write a letter of recommendation. So I'd say definitely, if you have anyone who can speak to that, that's always good to have. And then I stress a lot of my leadership positions that I held in extracurricular activities. So both in sailing and robotics, I talked a lot about that in my essay. It gave me a lot of good material to kind of show that I was capable of being an independent worker that could learn and add to my facility. And I really ultimately aimed to show the sort of impact I wanted my future career to have, and how I wanted to progress as like a test engineer throughout that career. So with all that being said, I kind of have, I guess, three main points of advice for you as you go through the process. So whether you're in college or high school, just get involved. So whether it's clubs or research or work, all this is going to give you good material to pitch yourself as a smart scholar, and really for anything that you want to do. And then also just reach out. So, go to career fairs and connect with people and try and really build these relationships. And as Charlotte said before, reach out to some of these potential sponsoring facilities to see what they might do, and if you're really interested in doing that. And I know that my base offers some site visits that you can get involved in through our strategic education office. So if you could do something like that, that's definitely helpful. And then also use your same smart application to apply to other programs too. So as I mentioned before, I did SSCP before, so if you could kind of tie in both of those, it would definitely give you some other experience to back yourself up on for future applications if you don't happen to get Smart this year. But yeah, that's kind of my experience with Smart. It's really been great so far. Um, now I'm gonna pass it off to Romney to talk to you guys more.
Thank you, Eli. We really appreciate hearing your story and sharing such great pictures. And I'm sure everyone appreciates giving some tidbits of advice for the application. So thank you. So now that you all are familiar with SMART, let's explore the application timeline and how that strengthens the application. The application does open August 1st every year and closes the first Friday in December. This year, that will be Friday, December 4th. Once the application closes, the sponsoring facilities begin reviewing applications January through March and conduct interviews during this time. We carefully review thousands of applications to ensure a thorough and fair selection process, and sponsoring facilities will review the applications and contact applicants for interviews during that time. Offers then go out in April, and we are committed to keeping all applicants up to date on the status of their application and next steps, regardless of the award decision. Between May and July, scholars who do accept their award will perform site visits. So as Charlotte mentioned, that is at phase 0. You do your site visit, meet your experienced mentor. Then in July, SMART awardees attend orientation. So this allows scholars for the current year's cohort to network, meet one another, and prepare for the start of their SMART journey. And then finally, on August 1st, you are officially a SMART scholar. Funding begins and awardees start their academic pursuit phase, focusing on the year ahead, maintaining that 3.0 GPA. In the summers between your degree, you would do that 8 to 12 week internship. Although the December 4th deadline may seem distant, it tends to arrive sooner rather than expected. So we really encourage students to start, and then we will cover some of the application sections now. So to make the application process more manageable, we've created a really helpful guide that breaks down the requirements into simple daily tasks. By following this plan, you can complete your application in less than 8 weeks if you get started now. If you click on that QR code, it will take you to a link that then you can download our guide. If you get started now, as we said, you could be done by October, have lots of time to have that application reviewed and not be stressing last minute. So we really, really encourage you all to get started now. Don't wait to the last minute, and please take advantage of this 8-week guide that we have. To get started on your application, applicants first need to complete the registration page to ensure that you are eligible. If you are, you will receive access to the application portal. Upon registration, applicants will be sent an email with information on how to log in to start the application. Once an account is created, applicants will then be directed to the SMART application portal. A completed application will have a check next to every section. A button will appear that says submit your application. We'll discuss more of these sections in details as we go through the slides. One of the first sections is the About Me section. Personal information like contact information, addresses, citizenship, and demographics. Excuse me. So after completing the Privacy Act and application instructions, applicants are encouraged to upload their resumes and transcripts. You can upload your resume at any stage of the application process, but submitting it early is a simple way to make progress and check an important item off the to-do list. Resumes should not exceed 2 pages, and they must be uploaded as a PDF. Your resume content should include your contact information, relevant work experience, education, and then some optional details are if you are a retention scholar, then you would put your current clearance level, organizations and affiliations, awards and honors. The structure of the resume, please prioritize relevant and recent experience. Use concise, results-focused language. Demonstrate skills and competencies, and try to omit any unrelated experience. If it's not relevant, you can cut it. High school applicants, if you do not have a professional resume, you can use an academic resume and just list extracurriculars and achievements throughout your high school career. So next, we encourage applicants to upload their transcripts. Unofficial transcripts are okay, and you will be able to pull those from your school's portal and submit those as a part of the application process. If you are awarded, you would then submit your official transcripts at the time of award in April. For the application, you will need to submit your most recent unofficial transcripts. This means if you've taken college courses while in high school or are dual enrolled, you would submit your college transcripts. If you have not taken any college courses, you would submit your high school transcripts. If you are currently enrolled in a community college, you would submit your most recent community college transcripts. If you have not pursued college immediately following high school, then you submit your high school transcripts. Your GPA should be your cumulative GPA for your most recent transcript. SMART does use a 4.0 GPA scale. This means that it is unweighted. We do have a GPA calculator on our website should you need to transfer that from a weighted or unweighted GPA. If you've taken college courses while in high school or are dual enrolled, you would use your college GPA. You would use your college GPA if you are enrolled in community college. And then if you are in high school, you would use your most recent high school GPA. Okay, so the application does require references. As Eli mentioned, SMART asks reference providers to complete a standardized reference form instead of the traditional reference letter. This form aims for a more equitable process by standardizing the evaluation of applicants, and it also saves our providers time. So you will need to have at least 2 completed references to have a complete application, but you can have up to 5. Should be able to speak to your technical and personal skills. We suggest you contact your references before adding them to your application, but you can replace references once you've added them to the system. On your end, you enter the name, email, and relationship in the application, save the information, and the SMART portal and an email invitation to those references. Reference providers will then submit their reference forms through their own portal, and you will be able to see when they are submitted. You should please contact your references early so you're not waiting on them to submit your application. Although you can submit your portion, your application will not be considered complete until you do have at least 2 references. References first provide some basic information about themselves and how they know the applicant. They then evaluate the applicant on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being rare, 5 being consistently, on academics, professionalism, teamwork, communication skills, interpersonal skills, and internal motivation. The evaluation is based upon how you compare to other peers. So a 1 is the bottom 50% of peers, while a 5 is the top 1%. If a reference cannot speak to a particular subject area, they can simply put NA, and it does not negatively affect the applicant. References evaluations, they help align applicants to sponsoring facilities that best suit their strengths. So it is really important to choose references that can speak well to both your personal and career goals. So the My Experiences component of the application is an essential section where you showcase your academic and professional journey. This allows sponsoring facilities to review and assess the whole applicant. For academic background, you will upload your unofficial transcripts and submit your GPA. Your academic status indicates where you are in your current educational journey, whether you're in high school, an associate program, or pursuing a bachelor's or graduate degree. With academic institutions, you current university or college or your high school. The professional experience section is next, and this is where you speak to yourself professionally and you would upload your resume. And if you are a retention scholar, this would be where you upload your clearance status as well. In the community and volunteer work section, we look to see how you're involved in your community. These experiences can be just as valuable as academic achievements. Next, you will enter your leadership experiences, which can include class offices, committee chairs, extracurricular activities. Moving on to teamwork, this can include research and academic projects, clubs, and extracurricular activities as well. And for both leadership and teamwork, you'll need to provide contact information for each experience you enter. You'll include information on the organization, and then we will have that confirmation for the application. And for awards and honors section, if an award is granted by the government, there is a box that you can check that says federal awards. And so we do ask that you make it clear if that was a federal award that you received. And then lastly, if you participated in any previous DOW programs such as Pathways, AEOP, JSHS, NREP, we do ask that you tell us about this as it's really vital for us to understand how DOW programs feed into the SMART program. The application asks for a personal statement. This is your opportunity to stand out and tell us your unique story. It plays a vital role in the application process, so please try to differentiate yourself by highlighting what makes you special, your passions, your journey. Ensure you respond comprehensively to all provided questions or prompts. Share your educational and professional aspirations. Discuss how your chosen fields align with your future goals. Explain why you want to be a SMART scholar and highlight what attracts you to the program and how it aligns with your ambitions. Describe how you envision contributing to the DOW's mission and illustrate your commitment to advancing the objectives of national security. Seek feedback. So please work with university writing mentors, advisors, mentors to review and refine your personal statement. Multiple perspectives can really help you polish your narrative. Try to be as concise as possible and proofread. So keep your personal statement concise and focused, aim for clarity, and avoid unnecessary jargon or lengthy explanation. Through proofreading your statement, thorough proofreading your statement in grammar, spelling, punctuation errors, help ensure that you have the best writing possible when submitting that personal essay. There's also a keyword selection feature in the application under the My Experiences section. This is where you can select up to 10 keywords that best align with your degree pursuit or your interests. This list of keywords is not exhaustive, but the ones you select does help pair you with sponsoring facilities. And so it assists in matching applicants with the facilities that are seeking those same interests. We also recommend including these keywords in your personal statement, showing how they apply to both your degree pursuit and your interests. If there are none to report, then you can simply check the box that says none to report. Selecting sponsoring facilities. This is a required part of the application. It's located under the proposed award details section, and this section is one of the most influential sections of your application. To assist you, we do have an optional tool within the application that helps narrow down choices. Applicants are required to enter at least 3 sponsoring facility preferences, but you can enter as many as 5. Please do your research as there are aspects to preferred sponsoring facilities that the tool can provide assistance with, but we really want this to be a good fit for both the applicant and the sponsoring facility, so doing your research is very important. Additionally, the sponsoring facility recommendation tool is an optional resource that really helps you research and select facilities. It generates responses based on the STEM discipline and degree level selected in your application. It'll provide a list of all facilities that match the applicant's prompt. So for example, if you put that you have a BS in software engineer, or you're getting your BS in software engineer, and you put your geographic location, the responses generated will be the most familiar to least familiar. And we've also enhanced this feature so that it now has a color gradation to reflect the level of similarity. So green will show most familiar, yellow is somewhat familiar, and red will be least familiar. If a facility is not listed, it means it didn't match the criteria you used in that. Each facility also has an overview page on our SMART scholarship website. And this is a chance for you to learn more about the facility, their involvement with SMART, and their DOW mission. After you've researched sponsoring facilities, if you have any additional questions or would like to reach out directly Please email our SMART component liaisons at smartcl@smartscholarship.org. That email address will be provided in one of our last slides, so no need to worry about that. Our SMART component liaisons work closely daily with our sponsoring facilities, and they can pass along your requests. It's really imperative, though, that you do your homework on these sponsoring facilities because they do play an integral role in your SMART journey. So now the question that we get asked most frequently, what are some tips for a competitive application? We'll cover a few different application sections, but we would like to point out the SMART Program Office continually makes improvements to the application process to reduce barriers for applicants. First, we recommend all applicants review the application tip videos. The application contains links to the videos, but you can also find them on our website under the Outreach tab. You'll see all previous webinars on this page as well if you're curious to watch previously recorded webinars. And these videos are helpful resources for each section of the application, so we strongly encourage applicants to watch them before starting a section. First, the personal statement. Some applicants find this section very challenging. It's hard to talk about yourself and tell your story, but it's a great place to include information that we wouldn't know about you other places in the application. So it's an opportunity to let the sponsoring facility know what hasn't already been said in the other aspects of the application. The personal statement is 3,500 to 7,000 characters, and that includes spaces. That's approximately 500 to 1,000 words. You'll want to answer a few questions here, like what is your educational or professional goals? We really want you to explain your interest in your particular STEM field. Why do you want to pursue the SMART program? Why do you want to work for the DOW? How does your educational career path meet the needs and mission of the DOW? It's also important to mention specific STEM skills, research interests, and focus on a particular field of study, and how that could align with sponsoring facilities. You can also, again, search and use those keywords, and that's a good way to have those keywords with your interest connect to the sponsoring facility's interest as well. Rather than uploading a document, applicants will have to type their personal statements into the application. So please review the personal statement for grammar and comprehensibility. We recommend finalizing the personal statement in a Word document or other application before copying and pasting into the application itself. And moving on to the reference section, references should be someone who could speak to an applicant's personal and professional experience. This can be a mentor, an advisor, a teacher, a professor, previous employers, coaches, clergy, volunteer organizations, anyone that clearly understands your career and educational goals. References section can be one of the hardest parts for the application because you're waiting on other people. So it's really imperative that applicants reach out to their references early in the process and make them aware of what's expected of them so that they are able and willing to submit that reference in time. References do have to submit by the December 4th, that first Friday in December deadline for the application to be complete. So what's expected of a reference? Instead of writing letters of recommendations, references complete a standardized evaluation form. It's several questions they will be asked to respond to, as well as an option to provide a free response in an open text box. They should expect to be on the lookout for an email from the program, so having an accurate and valid email address is important. After applicants input a reference's information, they select send email, which generates an email to that reference provider with instructions for accessing the reference form and logging in. References responses, again, must be completed and submitted by the December 4th application. Applicants can check in the portal to see if the reference has submitted a response. Reference forms assist sponsoring facilities in identifying suitable applicants for their specific environment. So they're very important and frequently are a distinguishing element in a successful application. Finally, the sponsoring facility section. We mentioned this earlier, but it's worth saying again that proper alignment with the sponsoring facility's objective is paramount to a Smart Scholar success. With so many facilities, it's important to spend time thoroughly researching the options. Once an application has been started, applicants have access to the sponsoring facility recommendations tool that I mentioned, and this can assist with that research. Responses are generated based on your STEM discipline, degree level selected in the application. So this is a great starting point to help you with looking into some of these sponsoring facilities. We also recommend playing around with the filter function on the sponsoring facility page that we mentioned earlier so that you can see more thorough information in the website. Again, can list up to 5 but keep in mind that sponsoring facilities consider applicants' preferences when reviewing the applications. Again, if you find yourself needing assistance, please don't hesitate to reach out to our component liaison team at smartcl@smartscholarship.org. Again, that website will be on the last slide, and you can visit our website and select the contact us for additional help as well. So these are just a few tips to assist with the application process, but there is a wealth of information on the Smart site, and we strongly encourage everyone to explore it to maximize your chances of success. When completing your application, please don't be afraid to use the resources you already have. So some suggestions, schools and universities, there's plenty of services offered to help you with your application. Many have writing centers staffed with tutors that can help you brainstorm ideas, structure your essay, improve your writing style, and proofread your drafts. Some offer career services that can provide guidance on crafting compelling essays, preparing for the interview, and building strong resumes. Local libraries often host workshops, and universities also have extracurricular clubs or associations that can sometimes assist with reviewing personal essays or resumes. Educators is another great tool. So faculty, guidance counselors, and teachers are great contacts for guidance and support. They can offer insights into your academic and extracurricular achievements, submit the recommendation form for you, and also help you tailor your align with your goals and strengths. And then your network and community. So leverage the community and networks you already have. So previous or current bosses, mentors, coworkers, these are all great places to start. Additionally, if you are part of community organizations such as after-school programs or on-campus clubs, professional societies, you could ask peers to review your application. Many smart scholars are also a part of professional networks, so you can reach out to see if anyone in any of those networks is a scholar and if they have any advice or will be willing to review your application. Oftentimes, communities in your city may have nonprofit organizations like Boys and Girls Clubs that will offer workshops, and those may cover things like resume or essay tips. And then there's also resources that you can go to provide feedback on your application materials, help you highlight relevant experience and achievements, and offer advice on presenting yourself effectively. So we really just encourage you to be sure that use the resources presented around you that you may already have to ensure you have time to gather the necessary information and seek that advice. So here is just some data from our most recent cohort. The 2026 SMART cohort was the largest in our program's history. We got over 8,000 applications and over 600 were awarded. Awardees represent over 200 different colleges and universities, and they will support 120 different sponsoring facilities. 46% of our 2026 scholars are pursuing their bachelor's degree, while roughly 18% each are pursuing either a MS, PhD, or combined BS and MS. Top disciplines in our 2026 cohort included mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, and computer science. And while these were the top disciplines, sponsoring facilities select applicants across all disciplines. The needs really do vary annually. The hiring needs change from year to year. So we always tell students, if your major, has lower numbers, does not mean that you should not consider applying. Again, what sponsoring facilities are looking for fluctuates from year to year. The total number of awards has also risen steadily over the years, and so has the need for different STEM disciplines with each component. So please review the sponsoring facility profiles page on our website to better understand the STEM disciplines and focus areas that they are looking for. You continue to have questions about the SMART program, these are the contacts that you can reach out to. Anything related to the application or SMART program, please send an email to smart@smartscholarship.org. Anything related to sponsoring facilities can be sent to our component liaisons. And then all things technical related to your application can be addressed by submitting a help desk ticket within the application portal or on our website. And now I will turn it over to Brittany for polls and Q&A.
Perfect. Yes. Thank you, Charlotte, Romney, and Eli. So before we get into Q&A, I am going to launch one more poll for everyone just to gauge how helpful you found the content and information that we have provided so far during the webinar. So we'll give everyone a minute to respond to that. And hopefully, if anyone is still looking for more information, we can answer those questions during this kind of live Q&A portion that we have coming up. So we have received quite a few questions so far, so we'll get started addressing those questions and still continue to drop your questions in the Q&A box, and we will get to as many as we can. So to start off, let's see, our first question that we have is, and Charlotte and or Eli, I mean, I think Eli, you touched on this a little bit, but maybe you can, and Romney's obviously discussed this quite extensively, but any additional recommendations on how best to go about choosing facilities and kind of when doing the research, kind of what to look for? And then there was also like a question around that when you are trying to figure out picking your facility, how important is the location? Are they prioritizing the location where you're located?
Yeah, I mean, I can say at least for me, I picked most of at least out of the top five or so that you have to put. I picked them almost exclusively just off of where I would want to live because I'm gonna be committed there. Uh, for however many years that I receive funding. So I picked it mostly based off of location.
Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing, Eli. And I'll add on to that to say that there are, so many sponsoring facilities across the US that a really good way to pare down that list is where do you want to live and start there. If there's not a specific place or region or coast that you're interested in, then really dig into, well, what is the type of work life that I want, right? Where can I find that work and where do I want to be? Do I want to be in a lab? Do I want to be in an office? And look for those experiences on the sponsoring facilities pages. And the location, if you're coming from a different location than your sponsoring facility, it doesn't traditionally impact your ability to apply there or to be selected there. And I think that one of the most important things you can do is really put a lot of time into that ranking of where you want to work, because your application is most likely to get reviewed by your top facilities listed as your preference. So you really want to cater to that and try to make sure that you understand what is important to you in a research facility, whether it's the work, the location, the size of the organization, all the things that you can use on our website. Back to you, Brittany.
perfect. Okay, so the next questions we had a question around if we would be discussing retention specific today. So I will address that we are going to be having a retention specific webinar where we'll dive into kind of the nitty gritty and like the niche components of retention applicants. And that will be on October 13th at 3:30. And we'll share the QR code at the end of this presentation for that. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into retention on that webinar because it does have some kind of special pieces to it. But there was also another question with retention, though, is what is the difference in the application process if I am applying as a current DOW civilian? Is the application different? Is that application process we just walked through essentially the same?
I can tackle that. It's for the large part very similar, but if you're a current DOW employee applying as a retention scholar versus a current student that's not a DOW employee that's applying, our retention scholars are required to provide some documentation from their supervisors that it concurs with their application, since this is going to be a full-time academic pursuit that needs to have supervisor approval. But everything else is largely the same.
Okay, so the next question was around, is there a limitation for the number of people that does get selected out of the applicant pool? So kind of how is that number established each year?
That is a great question. So the sponsoring facilities are actually selecting the scholars that they want to work with them, that they're going to be mentoring during academic pursuit, providing internships for, and transitioning to full-time employees after graduation. So the number of scholars that we select each year is based on their workforce needs, meaning the workforce need from the different components, the Army, Navy, Air Force, and other DOWs, they are driving the number of scholars that get awarded each year. There is a budget that we get from the Department of War that normally we get to meet the demand of the sponsoring facilities.
All right. Let's see. So the next question. Obviously, we talked a lot about how important it is to submit your application early, but there was a question of, is there a benefit of submitting your application early? Are applications reviewed on a rolling basis, or kind of what does that review process look like? And so will the applications be seen earlier if they are submitted earlier?
The applications are not reviewed on a rolling basis. The sponsoring facilities get access to the applications all at once the application portal closes. So the benefits to getting your application in early is making sure that your folks that are providing recommendations have time to fulfill that, to making sure that you don't have anything that happens the day you want to submit, if you lose internet access or something like that. But those are all personal, professional benefits. We don't see any applications early. We get them all at once.
Yeah. Like Charlotte said, yeah, that they are all reviewed at once, but we will continue to push to try to get it done early, just also for your, like Charlotte mentioned, your peace of mind, right? One more thing off your plate, as opposed to as you're getting close to December, if you have finals or midterms, things like that, you don't have to worry about that time crunch coming in. Okay, so specific to someone who is looking to get their PhD, a question around the personal statement of how detailed and technical should we get in detailing our research plans? Is it okay when we're submitting this application if we're not 100% sure of the viability of the research scope or we want to pursue?
For that, I'd say that you want to, in a personal statement, share your passion for your research, what you want to get out of the SMART Scholarship, and your alignment with your top sponsoring facilities. And if you can do that through talking about this research that you're proposing, then by all means, that's a great narrative. If it's going to change based on the program that you get accepted to, or the professors that you're going to be working with on your PhD, that's perfectly fine. For the 20 years that the SMART Scholarship has been active and supporting students, we have had people that are evolving through their academic pursuits, and that type of change is normal. And so don't worry if it's not exactly what's going to come out a year from now, as long as you're able to tell your story authentically and passing along that passion through your narrative. I think you're going to be good to go. And I welcome anybody else's comments on that.
Let's see. For Eli, obviously you're about a year into your SMART journey, but the question of how do you kind of anticipate making a difference with your technical work within the DOW? So even based on, your first internship, how do you kind of see the future shaking out for you?
So I kind of am able to come in with sort of a fresh perspective. So learning all the things that I am in college, and then coming back to my facility, I've been able to kind of come in and offer some new ideas, whether it's for different ways to instrument, or different processes for doing things. That's usually the best way for me to, I guess, to have direct impact. But I guess on a longer term, I'll be able to kind of develop and sort of take on a more of a leadership role in sort of testing particular equipment. So like I might be the lead for testing on like our dry stands or generators or something of that sort over time.
Awesome. And so there was another question. Someone was asking around kind of Eli's talking through his internship. Curious if that fulfills the service commitment or if this is all still part of phase one and what happens when phase two starts. Is that, are you working at the same facilities as your summer internships pre-graduation? And that is yes. So the sponsoring facility that does select you, all of your commitments are essentially fulfilled there. So while you're pursuing your degree, you're doing those internships at that facility, and that post-graduation employment will then start at that same facility. So you are starting to build those relationships early. So everything does take place at the same facility. You're not bouncing around from year to year. Okay, let's see. So someone had asked around, Charlotte, you touched on that there's a couple other countries, if you have citizenship there, that you can apply. There was a question around dual citizenship and whether that creates any problems, or if that's allowed as well then for the application.
That's a great question. So each lab is going to have potentially different policies on dual citizenship requirements. And in particular, it can be really challenging to get a top secret clearance with dual citizenship. Most labs are going to require a minimum of a secret security clearance. And that's where the dual citizenship can really come into play. So depending on the lab that you're applying to and your end goal with your career that you want to support, the type of work you want to support, dual citizenship may become a barrier. And the best way that you can get ahead of that is by asking in your site visit or by getting ahead of it even before your application and getting in contact with human resources through the open information on public websites to inquire about that dual citizenship. But that being said, in implementation, it can get a little tricky. You can apply with dual citizenship as long as you have, that U.S. citizenship or the other countries listed.
Okay, so this is around relevant experience to include on your resume. So we had some questions. So maybe we can talk a little bit further, specifically for those who are maybe in high school who, maybe don't have any work experience, but what other information to include in that on that resume, but also the portion of, right, we want to include the most recent thing. So someone had asked too, if we're doing a master's, are we going back as far as high school to put that relevant experience as well, or what time frame should we essentially focus on?
I can answer that one, Brittany. So for high school students, we wouldn't expect them to have relevant work experience, but they can do relevant high school experience in terms of clubs, extracurricular activities, those sorts of things. For someone that's doing a master's degree, we wouldn't expect you to go back as far as high school for your relevant experience. That would be your more recent, degree level experience, relevant research you've done, any type of professional societies or those sorts of things. So I think it should be relative to the area that you are in right now in your degree pursuit. So again, high school students, we wouldn't expect relevant work experience, just high school related activities. And for a master's degree, we wouldn't expect you to go all the way back to high school for that relevant experience.
Okay, so someone has asked, if I do get awarded for my master's, am I able to then delay my service commitment to pursue a PhD? Or is there a potential to extend the scholarship to also cover my PhD after I complete my master's degree?
A lot of times we have students that start out with one degree pursuit, whether that's whether that's a bachelor's and they decide to get a master's decide to get a PhD. You do have to talk to your sponsoring facility about pursuing that further degree and delaying your service commitment, because again, sponsoring facilities make these selections. It's with your anticipated degree completion, you entering into the full-time service commitment. However, a lot of times that's completely fine as long as you're still within the 1 to 5 year time frame that SMART will cover you.
Perfect. Okay, for sponsoring facility selections again. So the question is kind of what's the purpose of stating your preferred facilities if all facilities still have visibility and the option to select you? But also, can an applicant then be overlooked or downgraded by a facility if they aren't one of their top five?
So I would say the benefit of listing the top five preferences a lot of times because of the volume of applications we get, sponsoring facilities may initially filter by who listed them in their top 3 to 5 preferences. But that doesn't mean that those are the only sponsoring facilities that will look at your application. A lot of times we tell students to keep an open mind, that there may be a sponsoring facility that wasn't necessarily on your radar that viewed your application and thought that you would be a great fit for the position they're looking for and may contact you for an interview. So again, you are not limited to the 3 to 5, but we do tell you to be mindful that sometimes that is the first criteria of review that sponsoring facilities use because we do get a large volume of applications.
Okay, so this next question, are site visits only for students chosen for the scholarships, or is this part of the interview process?
Site visits are for newly awarded students. So you would only get a site visit if you receive that award in April. The site visits then happen from May to July as the opportunity for newly awarded scholars to be able to meet with that experienced mentor, get a sense of some of the work that they might be doing. So it's not a part of the interview process. It's solely for our awarded cohort.
So, question around if you do, what happens if you're accepted, if you're awarded the scholarship, and something comes up that prevents you from essentially finishing your program, or you change your mind before the funding starts? Are you able to kind of change your mind before the funding kicks into play?
This would be before they ever received any funding, Brittany?
I think we have both sides of it. So there's both questions, right? So is there a time period to essentially change your mind, or once you applied, is it if you are awarded, you're kind of locked in? I think that's question one. So if you are awarded the scholarship, there is a period of time where you then accept or decline the award. So you do have that time period. So once those awards go out in April, there is a period of time where you could respond and decline if you decided not to pursue it. But the second question was around if you accept the award, you're in the midst of your degree, and then something comes up and you don't finish your degree. Kind of what does that look like?
So if you're unable to finish your degree and do the service commitment, then you are responsible for paying back the portion of the scholarship that you were awarded towards your degree. So there is a repayment that is required if you do not complete the program and the service commitment as well.
Right. The next question was around are awardees, so if you do receive this scholarship, are awardees able to have 2 federally funded scholarships at the same time? Or would they have to essentially decline the other scholarship to pursue this scholarship?
As long as it doesn't interfere with the service commitment, then students are allowed to have multiple federal scholarship. So again, if it was a military commitment, then obviously you wouldn't be able to do both because there is that requirement for your military service once you graduate. But if it's just in terms of funding and scholarship and you can still do the service commitment upon graduation, then you can have more than one scholarship.
And then references, it was just again a verification of if they supply more than the required number of references, are all being evaluated or only the required number being evaluated, and it's kind of randomized who's evaluated, or how does that work?
So you can submit up to 5 references, and all 5 would be considered if you submit 5. So there is the minimum requirement of 2, but if you submit up to 5, all will be reviewed and considered as a part of the application.
So there was another question about, I think it was to Eli, but it was kind of around how much time did you spend researching each facility? Again, I think Eli, you had a connection with that facility, correct?
Yeah, so I'd already worked at my facility through CEP and SCP, so I obviously didn't spend as much time researching my number one choice. But for some of the other choices, uh, I asked some other people who work at my facility and um, kind of I guess spent probably only a couple minutes looking through because I really knew where I wanted to go as my number one.
Yeah, and I don't know, Charlotte or Romney, if you want to add anything around the researching of the facilities. I think we've stressed it quite a bit, but that is definitely right. If you haven't worked at one, if you have worked at one, that's great, right? You already have a little bit of awareness, but I do think that that is a big part of your application that you should really dedicate a lot of your time to doing that research, ensuring that the facilities you're selecting, again, like we've touched on, align with your professional goals and where you see your future going. You don't want to just select based on location. I think that's important, right? If location is important to you, but ensuring the whole package that you're really taking the time and dedicating time to look into those facilities and using the resources on the website. Again, you can filter them by your intended STEM discipline. You can look by location. Also looking at what degree level you're pursuing on the website, you'll be able to see, right? There might be some facilities who really are looking for heavy research PhD based scholars, and each facility kind of breaks down kind of what they have selected in the past. For that. But Charlotte, did you have something else to add to that?
Oh, yeah, I think that's great advice. I totally agree. And the sponsoring facilities have curated each of their info pages to address what is the day to day work life here? What are the types of projects we work on? To Brittany's point, what are the disciplines that we typically hire through the SMART program? But additionally, most of them have linked their YouTube channels or their LinkedIn pages or their social media sites where you can see the publicly releasable information on their projects, where a lot of these sites have even had testimonials from other smart scholars or their interns and the type of work that they're putting out. Sometimes when we're looking at the sponsoring facility pages, it can be a little bit frustrating because so much of the work is not at a publicly releasable level. But you can tease out that information from publicly available sources like social media and the lab's websites. And that's what takes time. But I think in the application process, that's going to be your best return on investment. Being able to actually understand where you see yourself being successful, being fulfilled, and being able to articulate that alignment in your personal narratives. That's what makes a successful candidate.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Charlotte. Rami, if we could kind of circle back to the resume, I think that there might have been a little bit of audio issues, it seems. So some people just had some questions. I think there were a few items that was recommended that you don't need to necessarily include on the resume. But if we could just kind of like revisit the key pieces for the resume, what things maybe don't need to be included and what to make sure you do include.
Yeah, so you definitely want to include any relevant experience to your STEM discipline, to your degree. You don't have to include anything that is not relevant, to again the STEM major, the degree. So if it's just taking up space and it's not necessarily relevant, we would say don't include it because you do want to make sure that that resume is concise and comprehensive and best gets across your skills that support, your degree pursuit, the DOW mission, the goal of the sponsoring facilities. Again, this differs for high school students if they are submitting a academic resume, but for the professional resume, we do ask that you focus on that relevant experience.
Perfect. Okay. So again, this is a little bit of like a niche for retention, but it does seem we have quite a few people still even today who are interested in some of the retention pieces. But so if you are going to apply as a retention scholar for your PhD, do you still qualify for the stipend? And how does that work around being a full-time employee? So what does kind of like that employment piece look like for retention scholars?
Yeah, I can briefly go over that because I think it'll be better suited when we have full context in the retention webinar in October, but there is still a stipend associated with the retention awardees. So our DOW employees that are pursuing degrees while staying a DOW employee. And the tricky part about that is that the stipend does not typically meet your full salary. So everybody's retention scholar experience is a little bit different depending on the lab or the component. There is usually some type of subsidy or part-time work that the retention scholars do to make sure that they meet their full salary and not take a pay gap. And again, I highly encourage any retention scholars, if they are interested in applying as a retention scholar, to reach out to their sponsoring facility point of contact to get ahead of that conversation so they can start having conversations with their supervisors and be prepared, better prepared for that webinar in October and getting their application in on time before December 7th.
Perfect. Yeah. Thank you, Charlotte.
And I should say we MIPRA funds to you if that for our retention scholars, they'll get that part, but that's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay, let's see. So another question. So for someone who's maybe pursuing a master's or a PhD, there's a question of, should we include in our application previous degrees that we have, so maybe their undergrad degree, if it is not a STEM related degree that they pursued, knowing that their future degree will be STEM related, but if they already have a degree in a non-STEM related field, should they still highlight that on their application?
I would say absolutely. Just because it isn't STEM related doesn't mean that it isn't worth mentioning on your application as a candidate that is likely to pursue a degree and finish a degree. You could think of lots of different reasons to include it, even though it's not STEM related.
Perfect. Okay, this next question is, can you be selected by multiple sponsoring facilities? And if so, how is that handled?
Students are only selected by one sponsoring facility. If there are multiple sponsoring facilities of interest, so that's worked out on the back end. So then you're only approached and awarded for the one sponsoring facility.
Okay, so how large of an influence does volunteer work or hours play into the decision of choosing who gets the scholarship?
That is a great question. As somebody who volunteers a lot, I always include that on my resume. And I think this kind of makes me think about, the original intent of the SMART Scholarship and finding and curating talent specific to a civilian service career. And sometimes I think that you can find a lot of value and have a lot of good conversation, especially going into an interview, by listing those things on your resume and your application. And going the extra step usually makes a big difference by aligning those volunteer programs, those extracurriculars in the lens of what's important to a SMART candidate. So how does this support your overall passion for civilian service? Or how does this contribute to your greater understanding of your discipline or your research interest in action? I would most definitely include those things on your resume and application, even though everybody's separate application is kind of reviewed holistically on its own merit. It's not really a one for one if you should have it or you shouldn't have it. You should try to curate the best narrative of who you are and why you want to work for the sponsoring facility.
Okay, and just to clarify again, there was a question around whether federal employees can apply for the scholarship. And so again, if you are a current DOW employee, yes, you would just follow the retention path. So another plug again, October 13th, we'll do a really deep dive into retention specific, but essentially you'll be following the same application process. So you can absolutely go in now, get an application started, and then join us for that webinar in October to kind of do a little bit of a deeper dive and further understanding of the niche pieces of the retention cycle. So another question we had was, someone said, I'm a high school senior, so I'll be starting my undergrad degree in the fall of next year. So they could apply this year while they are a high school senior. how are applicants like me compared to applicants who are already studying in college? So how does that kind of work for those who haven't started college yet, but are hoping to apply and get funding to start essentially right out of the gate freshman year?
I love this question too. This webinar has such a good audience with such wonderful questions. So I think this brings me back to the sponsoring facilities are actually choosing students based on their research, based on their graduation date, and based on their workforce needs. So they take the projects they have now and they see in the pipeline, and they look at the trending technologies and their capability forecasting that they're going to need expertise in. And that's how they choose their scholars. So they may want somebody right away and they'll pick a near graduating scholar, for instance, or they may want someone that can have 4 summers of internship so they can get on the job experience, really nuanced stuff that they can't get in a university classroom. So again, it's not an apples to apples comparison, but the sponsoring facilities are looking through resumes, looking for perfect fits for their workforce and their projects. And so you want to really sell yourself and sell your image, sell what you want and find valuable in that application.
Okay. I think this next one, I think, we obviously mentioned if you are awarded the scholarship that there's like kind of that opportunity for mentorship as well. So there was a question of how are mentors chosen and is it related to the acceptance of an award? And so, yes, the mentor piece that we discussed early on in terms of like, pairing you up with a mentor, that is, once you are in the program, but, I don't know, Charlotte, if you have any insight into kind of how those relationships are initially initiated or anything along those lines.
Yeah, I think that answer was perfect. It's a great answer, Brittany. And I think the differentiation that sometimes you might see is students pursuing graduate work might have a technical mentor more aligned with somebody that can be on their dissertation committee. But generally, your mentor is going to be somebody that is a supervisor and or technical mentor so that they can help you get to know the organization as well as the work. And Eli, I don't know if you want to comment on this, how your mentor was connected to your scholarship.
Yeah, so my mentor was basically the branch head for my facility. So yeah, it's pretty much directly connected with where I ended up getting assigned.
Okay, so we have a question around double majoring. So someone said if I'm planning to double major, and both majors are accepted for the scholarship, how would you best recommend choosing a facility to apply to? And I think with this one, and Charlotte or Romney, feel free to jump in. I think starting out, you can, look at the facilities on the page, filter them down, indicate both of those majors, right? You may see one that has both, but you do need to indicate your preferred or your kind of top major when you're doing your application. You can only select one STEM field. So I think that there's that piece of you will still have to select essentially one that is you're going to prioritize, but you can certainly use the tools available to see is there a facility that's looking at for people with both of those majors, again not necessarily the same person, but are there facilities that are looking for both whatever it may be, computer science and electrical engineering or whatever, and try to work that way. But you will have to still identify essentially your one priority STEM discipline. And then when it comes to references, so we have someone who indicated that they're a sophomore in college now, so I've only had the opportunity to spend around a year with certain professors, but has already kind of built some good relationships with them. And so does the duration of your connection to references play an impact on that reference piece of the application?
I would say that the duration of the relationship is not as important as that person being able to speak to your personal and professional goals. And so again, if you are a sophomore, we don't expect you to have extensive, research or relationships. If it is someone who knows your STEM discipline, knows your goals, your aspirations, then that would be, a great person to pick as a reference. So the timeline of how long they've known you is not as important as how well they can speak to, your goals and how well you would match with the SMART program and the DOW mission.
All right. Let's see. So someone had asked if I'm currently still in the process of getting my bachelor's. Should I wait until I start my PhD pursuit to apply for SMART so that I don't have to take a gap year in funding? So, right, essentially completing that service commitment if you're doing your bachelor's, and then eventually you want to go back for the PhD.
I don't think there's a right answer for that one. I think that one's personal preference. If you are okay with completing your degree, your service commitment, and then being able to get that PhD, perhaps as a retention scholar if you decide to stay. But because you do have to keep in mind that 5-year maximum, again, I think it's important for your own personal preference how you would feel most comfortable playing around with knowing that you have the service commitment and the 5-year, which I know PhD programs take up that higher your maximum that we have.
Yeah, and I think we have another question that's kind of a little bit similar. And so I just want to clarify this piece also. The question was, the scholarship covers up to 5 years. As a master's student completing this degree in 2 years, do the remaining 3 years essentially roll over to a PhD funding? So no, that's not how it works. So in your application, you're indicating which degree level you are pursuing. And so within that, right, you're also having to include when is your, intended graduation date. And so when those facilities are selecting you, they're essentially selecting you knowing, hey, this person has 2 years left on their degree, so we're going to have them as a full-time employee in 2 years. So if you're awarded this scholarship, that doesn't mean you're just given 5 years of funding. It's based on what you're applying for in the application. And so also, if you're applying for a master's and you're selected because that facility was looking for someone pursuing their master's. So that funding doesn't necessarily roll over just until you hit the 5 years. There just is a maximum of 5 years that you can be awarded. And then did want to clarify the references thing, because I do think at one point we accidentally mentioned 5, but it is a maximum of 3 references. So it is up to 3 references. So just want to clarify that for everyone as well. And sorry about that incorrect information earlier. Let's see. Okay, so this question is, and again, I think this is kind of what I was alluding to before, but I want to readdress this. So I did mention, if I do get accepted in this upcoming cycle, I will already be halfway done with my master's. If I use the scholarship for the second half of the master's and want to go get another master's in a different STEM field, will SMART fund that? So again, not necessarily, because when you're applying for the one STEM field you're indicating. And again, they're basing it off of the time frame that you're also putting in that application. And then I think we are just about getting close to time, but we'll end on this one last question around summer internships. So question around whether there have been cases of sponsoring facilities allowing online summer internships. So if the facility you're selected at maybe isn't close to where you live, are you still required to go? What does that look like kind of financially, or is the online option available? And I can kind of address this. I'll take this one on. So to my knowledge, and Charlotte, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe there are online summer internships available. However, if your facility that does select you is more than 50 miles from your home location in the summer, we obviously talked about stipends earlier, but if you're in this situation, you will receive an additional stipend to help cover those costs should you need to essentially live somewhere that is, again, more than 50 miles from your home address in the summer. So that is how that works if you are not, local to your sponsoring facility. And I think that is all the time we have today as we are kind of getting ready to close out, coming up on time here. I am going to throw up one more poll for everyone. So after we've now completed the Q&A portion, do you feel better prepared to complete your SMART application? And I will also go ahead and throw up that reminder on our upcoming webinars that we have. So we talked briefly about the retention webinar that's coming up, but we also have, before the retention one, we'll have a webinar on September 9th that is a sponsoring facility focused webinar. And so we'll do an even deeper dive on sponsoring facilities, talking through selecting, things like that, talking through, again, those stipends if you're more than 50 miles away and all of the intricacies of the sponsoring facilities. And then again, we will have that retention focused webinar for those who are already employed with the DOW and looking to go back to pursue another degree, and that will be October 13th. And then lastly, I'll throw up this contact information slide again as a reminder. Applications are open till that first Friday in December, December 4th this year. But we do ask, don't wait till the last minute. Take advantage of the kit we've put together for how to apply in 8 weeks and get those applications started. As you're working through your application, if you have any questions about the SMART program in general, email us at smart@smartscholarship.org. And if you have a more niche question around sponsoring facilities, reach out to our component liaison team, and you can contact them at smartcl@smartscholarship.org. Thank you again to our speakers and everyone who attended today. We hope you guys enjoyed this webinar. Thank you.